So I'm going to ask everyone on this call to mute themselves if you can. That would be greatly appreciated. And I'll just kind of aim you up there. There are some audio settings that you can find and adjust. Okay, so today we're going to talk about some verification tips, some combustion safety items, and a few updates for the program. I wanted to let everyone know that we are accepting applications for projects that are completing through December 2020. That's the length of our current contract. And I also wanted to remind everyone that we do have minimum performance specifications in the program. So if you're looking at a new project, take a look at this spreadsheet. You can get it on the partner portal, or we can email it to you if you have trouble accessing that. But this tells you exactly what you need to meet the MUB program requirements. Kind of in brief, we talk about various kinds of measures that we see in the program, what the definition of that measure is, what code is for that measure, and then what the MUP requirements are. And for the most part, these MUP requirements are going to align with Energy Star. So it's pretty straightforward. You're basically looking for Energy Star products. All right. Moving on. So this, I do this every year. These are verification tips that'll help you get your projects paid out more quickly. And this is also pretty straightforward, I think. One of the things that you should pay attention to are the deadlines for your project. So in the incentive reservation letter, there's a section where we note the verification documents due date. And we come up with this date during the incentive reservation call. We kind of mutually agree on it. And a lot of the projects this year can qualify for an on-time completion bonus, which is an extra $50 per unit if you can turn in your documents, a complete package, by the date on the incentive reservation letter. So I'd like everyone to check your projects, check what the status is, see if you're going to hit that date, and if your project's falling behind for some reason, please let us know as soon as possible so we can make adjustments to our plans. And then in terms of what you need to provide in that package, there's the verification letter. That's a template that we have, and we can send you if you need it, but it's basically lists out each measure, the basic specifications for that measure, and then it has places for you to fill in the project costs, the construction costs. We're going to need invoices on projects, so that's materials and labor, and a total. And the invoices, these are really critical for us this year. We've been trying to get better and more detailed invoices because we have to show PG&E that these projects are moving in towards being highly cost effective. And so if we have really good invoices, that really helps us cut out some of the fat that sometimes ends up on invoices from other work that's happening at the site. Photos, cut sheets for equipment, lighting schedules and takeoffs if you've updated lighting, new models and Econ 2s if anything has changed in your in the approach or in the efficiency values of the equipment, combustion safety test out results, permits, W-9s. So that's the package. Wanted to highlight again on invoices, we really need that split between materials and labor, and point out the actual measures on the project. So this is a pretty good example of just an invoice where the rater called out the different aspects of material and labor. But I'd like one extra step of detail, and that would be quantities. Even on lighting projects, we're looking to get the actual quantities installed of the various pieces of equipment. This is an example from an actual project, and in this case, the rater reached out to the supplier to get the supplier invoice, which is a really good way to get those quantities documented. Okay, also please include cut sheets and specifications. So if you have an HVAC unit replaced, look up the AHRI certificate, please. That's also really helpful for us. And then cut sheets for every product that's installed on the project. One other kind of item on cut sheets, if you can please note which item actually got installed. If you have a cut sheet with multiple model numbers on it, that would be great. This is a good example. And please provide good photos. So organize with the contractor to get photos of window stickers if windows are a measure on the project. We're looking for legible nameplates, and kind of take a step in, get that nameplate, and then take a step back and get the full piece of equipment so we have some context around it. I'd also ask everyone to organize to get some in-progress photos if we have something that we're installing that's going to get covered up. And finally, I know this is kind of a pain, but we need to get closed permits on projects. So if we have, say, a boiler upgrade, we want to get the signed off, this is ready to operate permit. Finally, lighting schedule. So if you're replacing lighting on the project, please provide lighting schedules, and we'll need separate tables for in-unit lighting and common area lighting because they're kind of treated differently in the energy model. So interior fixtures, we're using that lumens per watt value, the LPD in the energy model. So we need to call out common area spaces separate from the dwelling unit spaces. This is a kind of really basic and abbreviated sample of what we're looking for, but we like to know what was there beforehand, but then the verified lighting. So what was actually installed, the quantities and the wattages. That's what your lighting schedule should look like. So I breezed through that because I was woefully late to start this meeting, and now I've got some combustion safety stuff. This year, 2019, we made some updates to our combustion safety testing protocols, and those are detailed in the current version of the handbook, so you can all read them. But I wanted to invite my colleague Bill Ekman to go through the high points of those changes. So Bill, I'm going to check to see if you can hear me and if you need any assistance. Okay, so I might have to sneak in and help Bill 1 second here. Okay, Bill, let me know if you're there. So I'm going to check in with Bill real quick, but I think I can start things off.
This is Bill. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, hey, Bill. Yes, we can. Thank you.
No problem. I was on the phone, and for whatever reason, it was not coming through. So we will fix that right now. All right. And let's see. You know what? It's asking me if I want to show my screen. I don't see what you were displaying, so I might just do that right now. If
good.
that's okay with you. All right. So thanks, Matt. I know it's been a little difficult with the technical stuff this morning. So I'll pick up combustion appliance testing from here. So key things we want to hit: who am I? Why update the combustion appliance safety procedure? Where to find details, and kind of key items that have changed. And I'll list some of them here. Things like, now there's room versus appliance A and B and CO. The worst case process has gotten extremely simplified. There's steps defined by equipment in the handbook, so it's a number of things to take a look at here quick. So who am I? The easy answer to that is Bill Ekman, but that doesn't tell you much. Hope you can hear me okay. It looks like I'm experiencing network difficulties, so let me know if I'm breaking up. Without taking much time, I've spent the past decade as a trainer in building performance and combustion safety. In that time, I've trained and or proctored countless BPI candidates. Likewise, I've developed and delivered training for students in 14 different states, and the majority of those trainings focus on diagnostics, combustion safety, and adapting to QC requirements for those various programs. Basically, thanks to my experiences inside and outside California, I bring additional perspective to testing requirements and procedures that, like what we're reviewing today. So with that, let's look at why the combustion appliance safety procedure was updated for the 2019 program year. First, promoting and ensuring safety is a core mission of Pacific Gas and Electric and the multifamily upgrade program. With that, as various testing procedures evolve and seek to ensure safety and achieve in-field reliability, we have to evolve and adjust as well. So our testing methods and procedures must align with the key practices in our region and those practices that identify and help address the issues most commonly found. Now, in other words, PG&E has identified these key areas and actually has a full training program for technicians in this arena. They follow the natural gas appliance testing procedure, or simply NGAT. Well, previously, our testing procedures were based primarily on ANSI BPI 1200, which is a very good national standard. However, it did not always align with NGAT. And at times it was unclear if the ANSI BPI standard would return the same results and recommendations as NGAT. So, looking at and during the CAS testing procedure review for 2019, the choice was clear: align with NGAT to ensure compliance and consistency throughout PG&E territory and their processes. So change can be difficult though, but luckily there's significant positive that arises for field staff by following the NGAT procedure. Simplicity. Yes, the now current procedure simplifies some of the more difficult field processes, like establishing worst case, and it makes it easier for field staff to consistently complete the testing day in and day out. Items like, well-defined, clear steps and no more confusion regarding interior doors, air handlers, and etc., help. But we'll address that a little more fully in a few moments. Simply put, the CAS, or combustion appliance safety testing procedures, were updated to ensure consistency and reliability. So while you can easily review the MUP handbook yourself, let's take a few minutes to review some of the key updates. Now, I suspect that many of you have picked up on changes when you reviewed the updated MUP handbook earlier this year. But please feel free to share, any implementation notes that you found that have been really helpful. But before we hit the key changes, I also like to highlight that much of your familiar testing remains. Things like visual checks, gas leak testing, combustion ventilation air, standard equipment carbon monoxide testing, sampling procedures and guidance, and systemic failure definitions. Those all carried over from the previous procedure. There are also items that appear to be changes, so I listed them here, but are not material changes. As first, the update also added a number of definitions to help clarify items like carbon monoxide air-free versus CO as measured, accessible versus inaccessible, and etc. Now, these were just clarifications and no real changes. Second, we see this reappearance of the term draft test. Now, in more general industry, they tend to call our spillage test a draft test. In order to keep in alignment with the rest of the industry, you will see the term draft test, but for all intents and purposes, this simply refers to the spillage test with which we're all familiar. Now, for some actual procedural changes, with the update, there is an expansion of ambient CO testing. There is now a differentiation between ambient CO in the room versus at the appliance. Likewise, thresholds now align with the natural gas appliance testing gas service representative call requirements, and they better protect customers with lower acceptable levels. Now, here's where you likely have a question like, what is room ambient versus appliance ambient? From ANSI BPI, we didn't have that sort of differentiation before. Well, room ambient is, as you can expect, is the CO as measured level away from the appliance. So out in the room, and we'll actually see it'll define, what that is even more fully in the handbook. And appliance ambient, now that's CO as measured near the appliance. And again, the table will give specific guidance for locations based upon the type of equipment. Like for this water heater, it's going to say, hey, near the equipment toward the top. The other big change is in establishing worst case. Previous processes can suffer from implementation variation due to ambiguity regarding items like interior door positions, air handler operation, and things like that. Not to mention measurement variations due to temperature, wind conditions, and so on. So for 2019, the MUP team simplified this sometimes confusing process by incorporating the NGAT guidance. Now the worst case process is a simple to follow step-by-step procedure. So I've got some of it laid out here in just 4 steps. And if we note, it clearly defines things like how to set those interior doors. No more manometer, checking with air moving toward you or not, back and forth, do we open it or do we close it? All are open except for those key ones that are listed as closed, and closed that include doors between supply register and the return, room with a dryer ducted to the outside and a natural draft combustion appliance, and that forced air furnace or water heater closet door if one exists. And it goes through, turn on exhaust appliances, ensure registers are open except in that utility room or that water heater closet, and follow the testing summary table, which will also tell us what to do with that air handler. It clearly defines how interior doors shall be positioned, air handler operation, etc., without the need for constantly rechecking a manometer for potentially minor changes. In fact, you no longer need a manometer and outdoor reference to complete the process. Now here is where a diagnostics purist like myself, we raise our hand and say, oh, wait, hold on, but that might not be the ultimate worst case. And here's where we have to keep in mind that this is not a science experiment aimed at finding worst case, but rather a stable, reliable, and repeatable process to protect customers. Actual field evidence shows that this simplified process not only protects clients, but it is far less susceptible to implementation errors. So what we've got is a system that is quicker, easier, and more reliable to protect customers, and that's a positive change for all. Now, what has also changed is that now all required actions come straight from the PG&E NGAT procedure, and as such, they're readily available and directly aligned with NGAT. Things like gas service representative call and make safe procedures are all clearly defined and of course align with the rest of PG&E's processes. So now you can find all that key testing information, all those key levels, all on one table. Things like ambient CO allowable and location. And if we look at the table, we see we've got room ambient here, and then we've got appliance ambient for that floor furnace, and we can see that ambient CO, those thresholds kind of as measured, and it tells us where. For room, it says, center of the home, 6 feet above the floor. We're at that floor furnace above the top of the unit, and so on. So really clearly defined there for us. It also gives us the appropriate flue, either as measured or air-free, and acceptable measurement locations. And again, looking at that floor furnace gives us that air-free allowable or that air-free threshold of 101 parts per million or greater, and where to check it. Inside each exhaust port separately, record left to right if there's more than one. What we find is those align with the undiluted flue gas that we were always searching for with BPI, but now it tells us exactly where we want to be on each piece of equipment. The last thing on here is the make safe threshold. So there's make safe procedures for that immediate response if there's a additional threat to the client's safety. So things like for that room ambient, if we hit or exceed 26 parts per million of as measured CO, or for that floor furnace, if the flue CO is greater than or equal to 401 parts per million air free, or if that appliance ambient CO is 2 parts per million greater than the room ambient CO. So it's indicating an additional threat, and so follow the make safe procedures from there. And that's part of that gas service representative call setup. So when I look back at all the QC and combustion safety processes that I've seen develop in my nearly 20 years in this industry, many get more complicated and confusing without improving field consistency nor client safety outcomes. For 2019, the MUP team took a hard look at previous and available procedures to meet the goals of compliance with PG&E's requirements, client safety, and in-field reliability and consistency. By aligning with the PG&E NGAT protocol, I believe they have achieved that. We've got clear guidance that is in alignment with other PG&E processes, reduced process and remedial action ambiguity, and it's well-defined and a well-supported process. Through this update, it's even easier to get field staff comfortable with site processes, thanks to that step-by-step and equipment-specific procedures laid out in the MUP handbook. And there's an additional training support through PG&E's training centers. Rater partners can now complete PG&E NGAT training offered at any of the number of PG&E training centers and are no longer limited to only being able to qualify by getting BPI training, which we've seen has been inconsistent in its availability. So here's where I want to please refer to the MUP Rater Handbook for more details on all of the tables and processes that we've noted here today. Likewise, do not hesitate to reach out to us with any questions that you may have. I mean, even when things are simplified and there's a change, there are often initial questions, even questions like, is it really that simple? Likewise, we want to hear from if you're having trouble with combustion appliance testing so that we can continue to clarify and improve processes. So I've got my email up there on the screen. I'm sure it's going to be at the end as well. And with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Matt if I can, and we'll move on to the next section.
Great, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I hope that helped everyone kind of figure out some of the changes that we had to combustion appliance safety testing. I'm actually going to next turn things over to my colleague and our program manager for the program, Siobhan McCabe, to talk about the exciting program updates.
Thanks, Matt. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, great.
I think you might be sharing the notes section. Not 100% sure though.
Okay, hang on.
And meanwhile, I'll let everyone know that I think we might have a few minutes for some questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, please chat them into the question box. There you go. That looks perfect.
Okay, great. Sorry for the delay. All right, so the two topics I'm going to talk about today is regarding CPUC, the Commission's oversight involvement with, in general, the IOU programs, specifically ours, and then also do a quick throw to PG&E's on-bill financing loan program. So for the CPUC activity, it can get very detailed very quickly. So this is going to be more of a broad overview, and then a slice of what's most relevant to you, our program partners. But please feel free. This I do not think will be the last time we'll be talking about this either here, or I think we'll have time for questions. Please ask them and then reach out to us directly if you have any specific questions regarding your projects. So in general, the CPUC reviews custom projects from the different IOU programs. So MUP, one way or another, is basically what's considered a custom program for PG&E. And custom is different than deemed. So if anyone, say, brought just a lighting project through a program at one of the utilities, that's likely a deemed program where you got a rebate for each unit of lighting equipment installed, whereas a custom project refers to a unique approach. You can select the measures, and then through modeling, we estimate the expected energy savings and then give the incentive based on the energy savings rather than each quantity of equipment installed. And so because of customs more complicated, PUC will scrutinize projects for the programs and make sure that the utilities are complying with what's called the rule book for the programs, and depending on how strongly the programs comply, that could impact each of the utilities' records with the CPUC, the records and documents supporting the energy savings that they claim that they have saved through these programs. So PG&E has noticed that due to some commission staffing changes, that there's an increased level of activity across all programs for the projects that they will review. So previously, MUP, or multifamily projects in general from the utilities, have not been selected for review, and that is starting to happen now. And in general, the questions being asked, what PUC wants, is more or less all there, but it's just not packaged in a way that is easy for both PG&E and the PUC to readily understand and digest, since they are not as familiar largely with the program. They're familiar with certainly policies and retrofits and measures and all that, but how our program functions, the relationship of, say, the raters and the contractors to the program is more nuanced to newcomers. So we are sharing this with you all today because we need to work together if a project is selected and demonstrate that we are complying with the rules. And by doing so, we help PG&E look good for the PUC, because this is a good program and offering that we want to continue making available to the multifamily market. And, the better job that we do, the less criticisms that PUC can have about anyone's work here and how we're operating. So there are two types of reviews from the PUC. One is if they select an active project before incentive reservation And another is if they select a project the year after a project has closed. So far we've seen both. Some on the call might be very familiar with these requests. The former, the one that when an active project is selected, it will have the most, can have an impact on the actual project, even eligibility and what we can reserve. If a project is selected after the program year has closed, there's no real impact. There's no impact at all on the actual project. But if PUC sees that there has been, say, some level of negligence or some methodology with which they do not agree, PG&E might have to adjust their records and claims for the past program year. So, and that's where it goes back to, the reputation of the program would be on the line. That said, I think we're probably all most concerned about if an active project is selected. And in general, all of our measures that we say is available are valid, and there's no issue there. But what can be tricky for our program in particular is the program influence. We've been very flexible about projects having started construction or having purchased equipment, and those traditionally, not just for our program, but for all IOU programs, would be something on par of a showstopper. So if you find such a project, please let us know as soon as possible so that we can get the proper exemption made. Multifamily is tricky because of the scale, just because they replace something or in the process of, they're considering it. There's so much more that the program can influence in terms of scope and scale. And he understands that since the multifamily review activity is relatively new, I cannot say right now how PUC views that as influence, but it's certainly a strong case, and that's what we're going to present. But anything that you've asked for in the past where we've been flexible, we need to address that more explicitly. So please be proactive about finding that. And I know we also refer projects to raters, and we will make sure that we have our documentation in order in those cases. So if you raters are referring projects to us, we need the full story. And I'll go into that a little bit in the next part of statement of influence. But here, in terms of the delays that could happen due to an active project being selected, it can be either quick or rather long. So if what's happening is that in addition to our review of the rater's work, if a project is selected by the PUC, PG&E will also do its own review ahead of submitting to the PUC. So that's adding another layer. And then if the PUC selects the project, PUC has 30 days, and they can start and stop the clock on those 30 days to review a project. And if they take issue with any assumptions, the methodology, if a measure, sometimes we've made exceptions for how VFDs are allowed in the program. Maybe not VFDs, but say there's a scheduling that measure that we've allowed in the past, they might come back and say that that's not an eligible measure, in which case if this project only had 2 measures and this one was nixed, we have to do what the PUC says. So then the project is down to 1 measure. Either the project defaults, but ideally we all work with the owner to find another measure that they can do to still qualify for the program. And we cannot, even if we're done with our review and it seems like it's in good shape, we don't expect any of those sort of comments from the PUC. we cannot reserve incentive until PUC says that they are done with their review. And then if the PUC has selected this review front end, they will also follow up and look at the review during closeout. But as we all know, during the verification process, most the details have been squared away. So unless there were significant scope changes, namely in the order that they've added scope, that PUC has not reviewed, then the closeout review could also add some time.
Hey,
So,
Siobhan, it's Matt here. May I jump in real quick?
Yes, of course.
I just wanted to, all this stuff sounds kind of scary in terms of creating project delays and extra work. And I just wanted to say that, just kind of reiterate that this isn't happening for every project. And you all know that our TRC's review process is pretty thorough. So a lot of the legwork that you guys are doing kind of with the back and forth with us, should your project get accepted by or get selected by one of these things, doing all that work ahead of time is going to help it make this process a little bit faster than it might otherwise. The other thing I would like to mention is that we're just now experiencing this, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what they're looking for. So we might end up making a few adjustments in terms of what our review process looks like if we get feedback that we should focus in on something else. So those adjustments might make things just even a little bit more faster.
Great clarification, Matt. Yes, that is true. These are random selections. Most of them will not be selected. But that said, we want to be ready. Also, we've been seeing, we've gotten more projects selected for last year's projects than an active one. So, although we want to be prepared for both cases, so it's best if you're prepared assuming that the project will be selected, and during incentive reservations that we have everything we need should it be selected the following year. And yeah, our review process is very much on par with other PG&E programs, technical third-party desktop reviews. So all the work is there. We're just, what I'm going to next with the statement of influence. We need to make sure it's organized so it's easier for them to review, because sometimes we'll get questions that we know we have the answer for, or it's already embedded in there, but they missed it, they misunderstood it. So we just want to make it as clear as possible. And then there was also a question about this PUC happening for all incentive programs, not just MUP, and that's correct. It's still random, so in MUP, multifamily in general is much smaller than, say, custom or commercial programs. So it will probably seem like, if you look at the numbers, not a lot of multifamily selected. But it's certainly been happening for the commercial side for a long time, for years. And also we know that Bambi and other non-IOU multifamily programs are getting pulled into this as well. So it's not just PG&E MUP. Okay, so we're running short on time. I'll break down the statement of influence here. We're going to be developing a form to all of you to append to your assessment report or your audit report, and to make sure that all the pieces that are captured are included. Just know that some of these bullets, which come directly from PG&E, might already be included in the audit report. And they actually the audit report is a very strong piece of documentation. So that in itself is good form for MUP to demonstrate to the PUC. So if you feel like the story or narrative is already in the audit report, when you have this form, it's helpful to add any clarifying statements, but you can also just say, refer to the audit report. This is in there. So this first slide is showing kind of more of that story, the narrative of how the project initiated. For projects that PRC referred to raters, this is going to be a bit, we have a side of the story, and then also the raters, you have a chunk of it because you're out on the site and having real conversations with the owner and the managers and potentially even the residents. So I expect a lot of this information to be in some audit reports. There are different styles out there. Some are much drier and like, here are the measures, here's what we saw on site, with less narrative. If that is the style that you and your company complete, then please fill out the form. If your template includes more of the storytelling, then that's a case where you can just refer to the audit report. So I think these are pretty straightforward. They do kind of blend together. So if it's easier for you to answer them individually, that's fine. You can also just answer, say, all 5 in one paragraph, and that's adequate. And then this next slide refers mostly to the numbers. Some are provided in the energy reports, obviously, but from the expo we had in January, I learned that a number of our partners tend to not do cost effectiveness calculations. And this is a very strong piece of influence that PUC and PG&E want to hear and see. In general, the 2 strongest components of influence that they want to read about are technical. So did we get the owners to install more efficient equipment, which we do because we have in our program handbooks those minimum thresholds. And then also, do they expand their scope because of us? And since we require 2 measures, so oftentimes we get a property to expand, add on more than 1 measure. And then the other ones, they also want to hear that incentives improve the payback. The payback should be improved by at least 1 year. They like to see 2 years. And so I know this can be very difficult to assess due to, especially if we do in-unit savings, because we don't know the rates that the residents are paying. And so we can help here, make some assumptions. We can help try and find some, in general, the rates for the property. We don't expect anything super granular. We're not asking that you find the 10 different rates that happen to be in play at a property, but something conservative that demonstrates that, a 2-year payback. So, and then if, the owner has quotes, we want to see those, or those should be factored in here. But if there are no quotes just yet, we do have some resources that we can share to estimate costs. But just know that this is probably if you don't do this already, this will be new and we'll work with you. But if this is something that you do and just happen to not share with MUP, say in the audit report, please give it to us. That said, also any other documents, like if you do benchmarking or you've attended a meeting, if it's an HOA, they want to see those documents as well, or concrete details. Benchmarking is on par with the audit report. That's a strong statement in itself. And we're not going to ask explicitly for primary documents, but because that could be a huge ask. But if you have any specific dates that you can include in your narrative, that is stronger. And we might, if you can include an email, that's great, but we can adjust that for individual projects. And then this is the last slide on the statement of influence. And these are just sort of the wrap up. These might not apply, especially the last one. There should be some element of non-energy benefits. We can also help you understand what those are. If there's lighting is a measure, a lot of times that improves safety on the property. If there are HVAC improvements, thermal comfort, perhaps even indoor air quality, especially if they're, improve some of the gas appliances on the property, and we did commend your safety testing. Influences of the program, that could be, again, it might be nothing, but we want to try and tell something. So if they are a portfolio owner, maybe this got them to think about the rest of their portfolio, or, were they asking questions about like what other services do you, the raters, provide, or through programs? Is it benchmarking? Are there O&M opportunities? What can be done for resident engagement? Are they interested in renewables? Anything like that. It doesn't have to be just MUP, but what else are they interested in the world of energy efficiency? So we're at just about a minute. We'll hold on-bill financing for another time. There have been some changes. Please reach out to us if you have a candidate who's interested or you'd like to learn more, and we can go over that individually. I apologize for having to rush through this a little bit. We're at time. Are there any last questions?
No new questions have come in, Siobhan.
Okay, great. So thank you all. Again, apologies for the delay, and we'll send out a notice to everyone when this recording is available, and you can share it with your colleagues. And I know this was a dense presentation, so please reach out to us directly. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.